Right. Good morning, good evening, or good night, everyone. This is episode 1 of a series on grooming gangs. And I'm Tim Dieppe, head of public policy at Christian Concern and author of a little book called The Child of Islam. And Beth, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Beth Peltola, and I run the One Truth Project, where we are looking into Islam and thinking about it from a biblical perspective. Also, we do a lot of teaching in the churches across Britain and worldwide, and we do a lot of work online as well.
Brilliant. Jay?
Yeah, my name is Dr. Jay Smith. I have been working in Islam over 40 years, maybe 33, 45 years, and have lived in Britain for
say longer than I've been alive, Jay, but that'd be a lie. But yeah, it feels like it, you know.
What was the lie there, my dear?
I'm tempted to say it was longer than I've been alive, but you've been.
I say that. Alistair, cut that out. Let's do it again.
No, don't worry, it's a joke. I'm joking. Carry on.
So longer than Tim has been alive, I have been working.
Not quite. That was my joke.
So longer than many of you who are watching have been alive, I've been working on
That's probably true, yes.
And 25 years I've been in Britain, where I've watched this happen. It was happening. In fact, I understand that these grooming gangs have been going since the 1950s. That's when I was born. So these gangs have been going on as long as I've been living. I'm in the well into the 70s now. So this is something that's close to my heart. We met some of the girls who have been raped, and these are rapings, though they were groomed. My area of expertise is apologetics and polemics. I have a master's degree program that I lead on apologetics and polemics out of Veritas, and I have a Fander Film YouTube site that has been going since 2006. So we've been taking on Islam, and we've been trying to expose Islam to the world, especially to Britain. And this is one area that we really haven't tackled well. So I'm glad we're doing this. Tim, thanks for bringing us on board.
Thank you, Jay. Sonia?
Hi, my name is Sonia Dalmans. I'm a theologian, both in Islam and Christianity. Currently a PhD candidate in abduction, sexual violence, and forced marriage and conversion of non-Muslim women. And yeah, that's what I do. It's not a very easy topic.
It doesn't sound like a very easy topic, and that this whole topic in itself isn't a very easy topic to discuss, is it? But let's first of all talk about what it is that we're discussing. What are grooming gangs? Beth, do you want to kick off on that? How would you describe what this is, what this phenomenon is?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people, especially in Britain, have found it really hard to describe. And certainly in secular society, because I think secular society is so nervous to attach, for example, an ideology to it. And so the title that everyone seems comfortable in this country, at least, though I'm not sure it's really accurate, is people often call them Asian grooming gangs. Certainly grooming is a part of the gangs, but Asian is a little bit broad. And I think one of the things we want to explore tonight is there a religious connection? Specifically, is there an Islamic connection? So I would say that there is, if you look at the whole history of Islam from sort of 1500 years, you would see that this has been happening, 1400 years, excuse me, you would see that this has been happening since the inception of Islam, or this movement that became Islam. And so
is that right? Because we tend to think of it as a British exclusive thing. Do you know what I mean? Like the Americans are all amazed when they hear about it. Elon Musk did these tweets, was it last year, and suddenly woke up the Americans to this, that is happening in Britain, and everyone thinks it's an exclusively British thing.
Yeah.
So
it's international, and it's been happening all through the ages. And what we're saying, tonight, we're not saying it's exclusively just Islam or an Islamic issue. There's no non-Muslims that do this, of course, but it looks different, and there are different things that are driving it. And I think we want to expand on that tonight. What we're specifically talking about today is just looking at how the gangs that are most of the percentage of the men involved are Muslim men, often using Quranic verse and using Islamic norms and practices that we see within texts of Islam. And so we want to explore that a little bit tonight. So there's something different about what is happening on the streets of Britain and further afield all around the world.
Wow. Jay, do you want to expand a bit on grooming gangs and how prevalent they are and how long it's been going?
I mean, I've got this UK grooming gangs and Islam put out by Mark Dury, a good friend of mine, and also Beth's and Sonia. He is from Melbourne School of Theology, where I got my doctorate, and he looks at the numbers, and this is why it surprised me when I saw this report that just came out in June, just last month, because those numbers are not what he had back in December of last year. But he looked at just since 1997, and he says that since the rapes that have happened in Britain since 1997, 87% of them have Muslim names.
Yeah.
You don't have to say, you don't even have to say what religion they are, just read the names. And he says this shows that there is a huge preponderance, vast majority of the rapes in Britain are done by just one group. And he says almost
of the grooming gang rapes, we should probably specify there. Yes.
Almost entirely from Pakistan. He said there are no Asian, Chinese, or Christian, or Sikh, or Hindu grooming gangs. They don't exist. We can't find any. These are uniquely Pakistani. And this is what has not been reported. And this is why there is an aversion towards this. People don't want to say that, and that's unfortunate.
Sonia, is it just the UK, or where else is this happening?
No. The problem is, and that is also in the Casey report, right, by Baroness Casey, that she says there's no clear definition. Everyone seems to use the word grooming gangs, but we don't really have a clear-cut definition what that actually involves. And in the Netherlands, where I live, for example, we call them lover boys, but we're talking about a similar problem. Now, I have to be honest, part of the lover boys, so just like in the UK, young men prostituting out young vulnerable children, young girls, part of them are from my native country, Suriname. But there is, I think it is a 53-54% percentage is of Moroccan and Turkish background. And those obviously are also Muslim countries. We had a case a few years ago from the south of the country where I think she was 15, 16. A girl was prostituted out by a Muslim young man, and his defense in court was that she wanted this for herself and that he was trying to protect her because he was looking for, you know, men that were not dangerous, and so actually he was the good guy, and unfortunately,
I hope that defense didn't work, Sonia.
Unfortunately, it did.
What?
Yes.
What?
So not completely, he was punished, but yeah, for a bit it did. And so it is not a British thing. It's not something that's just in the UK. I believe that in Finland there was also, I forgot the name of the village, but there were also refugees or migrants. Anyway, a similar thing happened. So it is something that is actually in Western Europe happening in more countries. I doubt it is in the same, you know, the proportions might be different. But yeah.
It's interesting, the ethnic minorities that are perpetrators in other parts of the country are different, say, in the UK. And in the UK, people are sort of trying to zero it down into, say, mostly Pakistani or Asian grooming gangs, but actually perpetrators come from multiple countries. I think that's what really struck me about some of the reports I've read of yours, Sonia.
Yeah, and I think I do actually, I appreciate calling them also Pakistani, because I'm, I think, slightly different on this subject, because I do believe that part of the problem in the UK is the fact that they are from Pakistan, because Pakistan itself has a huge problem with human trafficking, child trafficking, and sexual abuse, also in madrasas, child abuse, which, by the way, I've read several reports, is also happening in madrasas in the UK. And also
sexual trafficking.
Child abuse. So whether that is physical abuse, or I've read several reports on the UK that is also happening.
Yeah.
And also the fact that Pakistan, there is this huge problem. There's Sahel is an organization that has annual reports on child abuse. And you see that they've been doing this for 10, 12 years now. You see the numbers are increasing in Pakistan. The reports are called cruel numbers. And it keeps happening there as well. So I think that, and then obviously, before I forget, let's not forget the abduction, sexual violence, forced marriage and forced conversions of Sikh, Hindu, and Christian girls, approximately 1,000 a year in Pakistan. So, you know, that is a problem in itself. So I look.
Of course, that happened famously in Nigeria, didn't it, with Boko Haram, forced capturing and conversion and all of that of Christian girls there. Yes, it still does, and it's not just Boko Haram. It's also Fulani. It's also the ISWAP, so the Islamic State West African Province. Right. It's happening in Syria, in Mozambique, in Burkina Faso, in Bangladesh, in Egypt. I wrote a report for Coptic Solidarity that Mark also refers to in the report he wrote for Christian Concern. Yeah. So it happens in a lot of countries, and I do believe that is a very important issue. Yeah, aspect, because it is, because we do tend to think this is an exclusively British problem, and then I think a number of people read that report and thought, gosh, this is not just Britain; it's a pattern of Islamic behaviour in other countries as well, and as Beth said, through the centuries as well. And as we've become more Islamicized or had a greater Islamic population, it's increased in prevalence. But as you said, Jay, since the 1950s. But Jay, you mentioned some numbers here. Do you want to speculate on some numbers of how much this has been happening and how many girls have been raped and all that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, the newest numbers that have just come out, and this surprised me. I didn't know it was this big, 250,000. You're talking about 250,000 girls just in the UK who have been raped. And they're saying that these 250,000...
It should be said, though, Jay, that's an estimate. And it's been criticized because it's based on the prevalence, like you take 1,000 in Rochdale and 1,000 in Rotherham, and you extend that across the whole population of Britain, you say proportionally this many girls have been raped. But of course, the Islamic population in another town, like in Cornwall or in Devon or something like that, is very, very low. So probably...
You don't think that is true, then, that number?
I think that number is open to criticism, but I also think we don't know what the number is. So I don't know what I would estimate the true number to be. Like, we've no idea how many in London, for example. Sadiq Khan's been denying there's any in London, and now the police are investigating thousands cases in London, for example. And, we had Sarah Champion at one point said there could be 1 million girls in this, right? So, but nobody has calculated it. We don't know. The best estimate we've got is probably that 250,000, but it's not a very robust estimate. Do you know what I mean? It's based on assuming that every town has the same prevalence, but not every town has the same Islamic population. So it's questionable. But what we do know is it's like at 50 to 60 towns, is it, or more? I can't remember now that they found in that group. And let's say at least 1,000 girls per town. Let's say that's 50, 60,000. That's a huge number in itself, isn't it? Just that many, but in London it's more than 1,000. It could be 5, 6, 7, 8,000, something like that. And in Birmingham as well could be a lot more as well.
What Dury says here, he says that it's in 50 towns and cities and 85 authorities. Yeah. And then he says in just 1 year, taking statistics in just 1 year, they counted 19,000 girls.
They did in 1 year. That's true. Yes.
So if you're saying 19,000 a year and you multiply that times 50. Can you see where probably they're getting?
I totally can. Yes. Yeah. 50 years. I mean, yes. So we don't know, but so it could be hundreds of thousands. It could be. We just don't know.
Every one of those girls, though, every one of them, let's just put a round figure, 200,000. Every one of them has been traumatized. Yes. Every one of them, this has had to affect them for the rest of their lives. And every one of them has a testimony that the world needs to hear. And for me, I'm aghast that this has been sublimated, that this has been let down. And to me, I can't understand why more of these women, if it's been going on since the 1950s, for 70 years, this has been going on. Where are these women and why haven't they spoken up? Because they're my age now and younger. And certainly many of them have been traumatized. This has affected their marriages. This has to affect their whole self-being. I mean, it has to affect the
I'll
way
tell
they
you
look.
why they haven't spoken up, Jay, because the ones that I've met are so damaged, so badly damaged that they can't really articulate it. You know, they can't really, they don't have the courage. You know, they're just, you know, they're so used to being enslaved effectively. Do you know what I mean? That it's very, very hard, and that, you know, quite often they're also addicts to drug substances and things like that as well. And it's very, very difficult to, you know, the ones that actually are articulate. And so, you know, Sammy Wilson and various others that have written books and so on. I'm sort of like amazed. Wow, how have you managed to become so articulate and so clear after the abuse that you've suffered? You know, because many others are not able to be so articulate and so clear about it. You know, because they are so badly broken.
And one of the things to remember is that some have been brainwashed into thinking
Yes.
this is okay, or even converted and think that they are loved, or some sort of attachment issues that you get with all of those who are victims.
All of that Stockholm syndrome type thing. Yeah. That's all part of it as well.
Can I add something, please?
Yes.
So when I grew up, mid 1980s, beginning 1990s, we started to talk, Western society started to talk about child abuse, and, you know, the silence would be broken, that sort of thing. Bear in mind that this was happening at that same time, and nobody spoke about it. But what is important here, I think, is the difference. Because, you know, the more like classic, better known situation is where someone would groom a child, you know, bond with a child, and then tell them to keep things secret. You know, it is our little secret. Don't talk about it, because otherwise I might go to jail, that sort of thing. What is so appalling in this whole situation with these Pakistani grooming gangs, Muslim grooming gangs, whatever you want to call them, is the fact that it was so open. It was so public. Children were actually, you know, driven around in cabs. They would be taken from childcare and brought back after a weekend. Nobody asked questions. I remember one victim actually said the only thing that the caretaker asked was the bill for the cab, for the taxi, a receipt. You know, school teachers, it was so open. It happened in restaurant, kebab shops, everything. So I think that is something that most people, when you think about abuse, you think about a secret, you know, something bad happening and a child needs to open up. But when you grow up, imagine you are abused and you know that almost half of the town you live in knows or suspects, but nobody says something. That will do something to a child. It will give them the message probably that when people know but they don't act, it probably is okay. I mean, we need to, as adults, we need to look in the mirror and acknowledge that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It was also some of the families, wasn't it, involved, like mothers and even so-called temporary marriages or marriage celebrations happening, and then immediately that marriage was consummated, but family members involved. And I mean, either family members are utterly naive, I can't see how that could be, and it's the whole families involved in the abuse, whether they knowingly were or not, although I think sometimes it would have been quite obvious. I think that's what's shocking about all of this as well. It's the community is involved. I think
the next step then, of course, though, is the turning a blind eye by, or even condoning by authorities, isn't it? So there was a case where a social worker attended a Sharia marriage of an abuser and the girl, and there are many cases where the police refused to act when confronted with incontrovertible evidence or arrest. In one case, they caught the chap in bed with the girl and arrested the girl, not the man. You know, I mean, you know, extraordinary things like that were happening, and you know, some of these girls would have known this, and you know, but also the other aspect, Sonia, that you didn't mention is the fear that they put into these girls as well. They would terrorize them, and they would threaten to burn down their family home and kill their parents and all this kind of stuff, you know, and they knew they were serious about it, and they would take them out to remote locations and torture them and all this. You know, it's horrific to talk about. I don't know how you managed to do a PhD on this stuff, Sonia.
Me neither.
With a lot of prayer. Train you through it, Sonia.
Oh, really? It's horrible. Yeah.
It is.
It's just as I said, with the past 3 days were horrible, where I was comparing the Armenian, what I call a genocidal rape, and the Yazidi genocidal rape with each other, and you just get numb after a few days.
And Jay, why do you think there has been the silence on this? I mean,
well, this is the question that I was brought up. I kept on bringing up, and we Beth and I have belonged to a group there where this was brought up a number of times. And the question I always asked was, the police knew about it in many cases. The social workers knew about it in many cases. Certainly some of the MPs knew about it. And in every case, they would refuse to go public with it. And when they were taken to trial, their excuse was community cohesion. That they wanted to keep community cohesion, that they didn't want to disturb the Muslim community. They didn't want to upset the Muslim community. And so these girls were being raped at the behest of community cohesion. And, as far as I'm concerned, if we're talking about decades of this, where nobody would help these girls, where they would turn their back on the girls and then blame the girls, and in some cases arrest them, and watch them not only being raped, but then being married to their rapists, and applauding it, and then refusing to go public or in defending this. Where in the world, what has happened to our police? What has happened to our MPs? And what has happened to our social workers? Isn't that their job, to support these girls? Isn't that what they're paid to do? Wasn't that what they were trained to do? Of all people, the ones closest to them, the ones who could help them, were the ones who turned their backs on them. To me, there has to be a public reckoning with this. And I don't know, help me here, Tim and Sonia. Have any of these people been taken to court? Have any of them ever?
No police officer has been held accountable for failures in relation to this. No social worker either, as far as I'm aware.
Not one.
No, not one. Not one.
Do you know what I also found really strange, if I may add to what Jay is saying? Britain went through a similar thing back in the 1870s, when Josephine Butler and the couple that founded the Salvation Army, Florence Nightingale and so many others, they actually campaigned, because British girls back then, also from the lower class, by the way, were also prostituted out, same age group, all across Europe, it is believed. And they then did this, started this campaign to stop that. And actually, they were the ones that, campaigned for a law against statutory rape, and also against guardians who would prostitute out a ward or a pupil. And I believe, but I'm not quite sure, I believe this inscription on the Old Bailey, protect the children of the poor and punish the wrongdoers, actually refers to that. That inscription is from 1905. And I really think it is so strange that after, going through such an immense campaign already, not even that long ago, Jay's a historian, that is not even that long ago. And then so many years later, 50, 60 years later, again, a thing like this starts in the UK, and apparently no one is stopping it. That to me is mind-blowing.
And it seems the reason they're not stopping it is because of religion and because of race and because of ethnicity. There is a fear of pinpointing one community, of stipulating that it's only coming from this one community, because none of this has been recorded that way.
Yeah, it is interesting when a Christian abuses someone, it would be plastered all over the media. It's a Christian pastor or youth worker. But if it's a Muslim minister of sorts or social worker, that will remain hidden. And it's interesting to see how that's reported as well. People are very quick to point the Christian who's done sin, but not the Muslim who has done great evil too.
Flip that on its head, Beth. In some ways, that's a good thing, because they expect higher of Christians.
Well, that's good, yeah.
You know that pastors and youth workers are not permitted to do this. Whereas it may be that most people think, oh, they're just Muslim, therefore that is permissible. as we're
I don't
gonna
think they
find
even
out.
think on that level, or at least if they do, they're far too afraid to say that there could be an Islam connection, that there could be something in the text of Islam and the history of Islam that allows for this. People don't even seem to want to explore the amount of reports I've read on the issue. And I'm almost by the end of it. Why have you not mentioned that, you know, the elephant in the room? Why have they not mentioned it, that there could well be a religious connection here? And I think that's something that is missing from almost all the reports I have read.
And there's still, there's still this political. I mean, the first article I read about this in 2018 was called "Sacrificing Girls to Political Correctness," and this is what it is. It's like we're sacrificing our girls in our society to political correctness because we daren't actually tackle the real subject, and so we'd rather let these girls be raped than actually, like you said, Jay, risk community tensions. Right? That's actually what it is, or risk being called Islamophobic, or risk being called racist, all that kind of thing. It struck me a lot because Sammy Woodhouse, on the day the rape gang inquiry was released, was interviewed by was it Good Morning Britain, and she said live on air afterwards that the producers said to her, don't mention the ethnicity or the religion of the perpetrators.
Then that's not a genuine report.
Prevalent, this whole thing.
That's not a genuine report if that's what they're saying to those that they're interviewing. That's not a legitimate report then.
She did anyway. She did
She
mention
did say
it.
it anyway, yes. But and then they apologized as well. It was Good Morning Britain, and they apologized afterwards. But the point is that the attitude is still so prevalent that we better not talk about the race or religion of this whole phenomenon, you know, which we're going to get into in episode 2, the whole aspect of the religious aspect of this. And
I think what else is really important, Tim, is that in ignoring this aspect, which we'll talk about later, it is also the vulnerable within the Muslim community, let alone anyone outside of the Muslim community. But there are so many vulnerable women and girls within the Islamic community who are not being helped. And I think that's something that there's even a book by, they call it The Imam's Daughter, Hannah Shah's story. That's that's a while ago now, but she was also let down by a Pakistani Pakistani social worker who made her go back into her abusive home. And that is still happening today. So it's even in our, we're not caring for our minorities, nor are we caring for vulnerable Muslim women, let alone anyone outside. And that's a whole aspect of this whole atrocity that we need to think about as well.
Yeah, and I think it's also, there's interesting that what Beth says, this a report that came out a few years ago. I think that Sadiq Khan is on the board of that group. It was a Muslim women's group, a report, and they say it is about abuse, as Beth mentions, you know, vulnerable Muslim girls, but it seems to be very, very politically motivated because they start by saying, oh, they claim only we rape children, but. And, you know, when you politicize rape, when you politicize child abuse, when that is your response to something that is so, you know, destructive to so many young people's lives, as Jane mentioned, you know, the trauma, the healing that needs to be done. When you don't even care for these children, but you immediately try to politicize it, try to use this sort of abuse as some sort of a defense or, you know, whatever. I think that's very worrying in a society. It really shows polarization rather than trying to, you know, get together and solve this problem.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a good place to pause episode 1 and to sort of come back next episode, episode 2, where we're going to talk about the Islamic connection in more detail and theological aspects of this. But thank you, Beth, Jay, and Sonia, and thank you for watching. And come back and watch episode 2, where we're going to get into the Islamic aspect in more detail of these grooming gangs. Thank you very much.